On July 22nd, 2008, the wrestling world changed when WWE switched from TV-14 to TV-PG. The days of bloody canvases, gratuitous weapon shots and bikini contests were gone, and that made a lot of people get very upset for some reason. Even though the company has been family-friendly for the better part of 2 decades now, a few naughty things have occasionally slipped through the cracks. So prepare to be briefly transported back to the good old days where people gave themselves head trauma and women were treated like objects all the livelong day. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 non-PG moments in the PG era. Join us. Number 10, Lesnar vs. Cena. When Brock Lesnar made his WWE return after spending years in the violent world of UFC, many fans wondered how he would settle into his new PG environment. As it turns out, the Beast had no such plans. He proved this with his first match back, the main event of Extreme Rules 2012 against John Cena. Lesnar took Mr. Fruity Pebbles to his limit, battering him from pillar to post in a surly contest that served as a warning for the drubbing he would give Cena at SummerSlam 2 years later. Big Match John got battered with several brutal elbow and knee strikes, resulting in 2 separate stoppages for blood. Lesnar bled too after the face that runs the place smacked him with a steel chain. This was a side of Cena that fans hadn't seen in a very long time, and to be honest, it was a welcome change from his usual goody two-shoes persona. Lesnar vs. Cena was one of the most brutal fights WWE had put on in many years, and a far cry from some of the other extreme matches on offer that night. Brodus Clay vs. Dolph Ziggler, anyone? Didn't think so. Number 9, Bryan chokes Roberts. If this moment had never happened, there is every chance that Daniel Bryan would have never shocked the world with his WWE Championship victory at WrestleMania 30. The Nexus, a stable made up of all the contestants from the first season of the game show version of NXT, had an all-timer of a debut on the June 7th, 2010 edition of Monday Night Raw. The 8 so-called rookies laid waste to the ring and surrounding area, taking out everybody in sight, including poor ring announcer Justin Roberts. Daniel Bryan went after the Dapper Yapper and did a number on him, memorably choking him out with his own tie to create one of the most unintentionally hilarious wrestling visuals of all time. Sadly though, not everyone found this funny. The American Dragon was deemed to have gone too far in this segment and was fired as a result. He was reinstated pretty shortly after, but as part of an anti-Nexus alliance rather than back on his original side. If Bryan hadn't been let go for breaking the PG rules, he might have gotten lost in the Nexus shuffle following their ultimately disappointing run. Instead, he was allowed to flourish on his own, and flourish he did. Number 8, Liv's bath promos. Being non-PG isn't just about violence and blood, it's also about getting sexy. Following the dissolution of the Riot Squad, Liv Morgan needed a new character direction. Going by a series of promo videos that aired in December 2019, WWE decided this direction was Woman Who Bathes. The vignettes showed Liv talking about how she wanted to shed her old image and become the woman she always meant to be. However, nobody was really paying any attention to this as they were focusing on the fact that she was delivering these lines from the tub. This steamy imagery reminded viewers of the bawdy days of the Ruthless Aggression era, where women like Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson were put in similarly enticing situations for no reason except to spike viewership. Raw's numbers were in the toilet at the time, which might explain why they reverted back to this tried and tested tactic. So what did all of this titillation lead to? That's right, Morgan's big return to television during Lana and Bobby Lashley's wedding, where she revealed that she and Lana were former lovers. Sorry, was this 1999 or 2019? Number 7, Alexa's dressing room. Speaking of the Attitude Era, here's a moment from 2019 that really could have happened 20 years prior. On the January 14th edition of Raw, an intern entered Alexa Bliss's locker room to deliver her a coffee. To his and everyone else's surprise, there was the multi-time world champion in a state of undress, covering herself with her shirt and telling the guy to get lost. Did this have anything to do with what was happening on the show? No. Did it go anywhere? Not at all. Did people lap it up? Of course they bloody did. Perverts. The clip was a massive hit on YouTube, racking up well over 1 million views in just 24 hours. It actually outdrew every other segment on the show, including Finn Balor winning a fatal 4-way to face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. Bliss has said that this stunt was supposed to pay tribute to Trish Stratus and her risque set pieces back in the day, but it really wasn't the same thing. I'd say the whole thing went tits up, but maybe I should come up with a better way of phrasing that. Number 6, Eva's wardrobe malfunction. If you say Eva Marie to anybody who was watching WWE in the 2010s, chances are they will either let out an exasperated sigh or have some very choice words to say about your mother. The controversial wrestler was seen by many as the epitome of the company prioritizing looks over in-ring skill. During her second run with the company, Eva used her reputation to her advantage by playing a character that kept finding new ways to get out of actually wrestling. One of these ways was certainly memorable. On the August 9th, 2016 episode of SmackDown, Eva was all set to face off against Becky Lynch when, and there's no other way I can think of to describe this, her bra exploded. To maintain her dignity, Eva was covered by a towel and the match was thrown out. This was a genius way to get heat, playing off people's preconceived notions of her as nothing more than a sex symbol who couldn't actually wrestle. This was one of the many schemes Eva hatched to get out of her matches, and truthfully, the most interesting her character ever was in WWE. And crucially, she didn't rename anybody Doudrop during this run. Number 5, Shayna bites Becky. When Shayna Baszler made her main roster debut during the 2020 Royal Rumble, people were expecting big things. The former MMA fighter had been a dominant champion during her NXT days, with many fans hoping she would win the big match to set up a WrestleMania title program with Becky Lynch. Charlotte Flair may have won the Rumble instead, because of course she did, but Baszler and Lynch still got their Mania feud. However, things took a turn for the weird on the February 10th, 2020 episode of Raw, when Shayna revealed that she was actually the daughter of Gangrel. She didn't actually do that, by the way, before you run to Wikipedia. After attacking the Raw Women's Champion, Baszler bit Lynch on the back of her neck, covering the man in her own blood. Grinning like a madwoman, Shayna just stood there as the crowd watched on in confusion over what they had just seen. The red stuff is not very PG, let me remind you, nor is ripping somebody's flesh open like Dracula on cheat day. Sadly, the angle went over like a fart in church and helped kill what could have been a stellar build to an all-time great Women's Mania match. Number 4, Jericho takes the tax. Even during the wild and wacky days of the Attitude Era, where wrestlers ate chair shots for breakfast, thumbtacks were used very rarely. Mick Foley might bust them out from time to time, but apart from that, they were mainly seen on the indies. Things changed at Extreme Rules 2016, when Chris Jericho took on Dean Ambrose in the first ever Asylum match. Basically, it was a cage match with a bunch of junk taped to the walls. Anybody remember Mitch the Potted Plant? Good times. During what was a fairly humdrum affair, Ambrose surprised everybody by pulling out a burlap sack. This was like a red rag to a bull, as the fans in the arena clocked what they were about to see, and they knew it was something very special. Jericho ended up taking a brutal bump into the tax when Ambrose countered a codebreaker. Seeing the Fozzy frontman's back covered in drawing pins was like something out of an alternate universe, and offered a glimpse of Ambrose's future hell-raising as Jon Moxley. Like 1/1,000,000% though. Wasn't nearly enough blood. Number 3, Pat's Blue Language. In the TV14 days, WWE commentators were a bit more liberal with their language, but it was still uncommon to hear a full-on swear coming from the likes of Jim Ross or Jerry Lawler. And no, the word puppies doesn't count as a swear. Anyway, enter Pat McAfee in 2024. The former American football star and most unexpected War Games participant ever was commentating on the July 8th episode of Raw, which featured a match between Bron Breakker and Ilya Dragunov. Clearly in awe of Breakker's explosive power, McAfee uttered the immortal line, "There's no other way to describe him other than a brick S-house." Really, Pat? No other way? Sure, that's simply not true. Rules around cursing had been relaxed a little under the Triple H regime, but usually only on premium live events, where the company didn't have to adhere to TV network regulations. Pat's outburst was very much not in line with said regulations, but rather than chew him out for his transgression, Michael Cole simply laughed about it. Basically, you can't swear in WWE unless you're a former Super Bowl champion. Well, or The Rock. Not saying it's a fair system, but them's the breaks. Number 2 is to you, Jeff. Jeff Hardy had for many years made it known that he wanted to have a match inside Hell in a Cell, and in the 2018 namesake pay-per-view he got his wish, squaring off with the devious Randy Orton in the show's opener. The charismatic Enigma had vowed to make his first foray into the Cell a memorable one, and this was certainly that, thanks to the abuse Jeff allowed himself to suffer at the hands of the Viper. There were plenty of brutal moments across the 25-minute duration, but one in particular was not for the faint of heart, nor was it for those of a PG persuasion, quite frankly. I am, of course, talking about Orton taking a screwdriver and using it to play with Hardy's ear. Not only was the act of taking the tool, putting it in the hole in Jeff's earlobe and twisting it like something out of one of the Saw movies, but it was also out of the ordinary for PG WWE to do something so violent with a common household item. I'm not sure if any company sponsors were turned off by Randy's mid-match body art demonstration, but it certainly put me off my dinner. So well done, lads. Number 1, Brock cracks Randy. We have bookended our list with 2 examples of Brock Lesnar knocking the bejesus out of 2 of his fellow 2002 OVW graduates, because who doesn't love a bit of symmetry? Lesnar was booked to face Randy Orton in the main event of SummerSlam 2016, an exciting match that somehow had never been done before on pay-per-view. This was sure to be a memorable clash, and oh boy was it. The finish came when the Beast got Orton down on the mat, removed his gloves, and then started viciously striking the Viper's head. You could hear the crack of bone on flesh as Lesnar continually pummeled his poor victim until blood began to pour from his forehead like yolk from a very muscular egg. The match was stopped due to technical knockout, and Randy required 10 staples in his noggin afterwards. Rumour has it that WWE booked this finish to coincide with Lesnar's return to UFC the previous month, but there were other ways of doing this that didn't involve turning Randy Orton into a sprinkler. Of all the bloody moments in the PG era, this is the most unsettling. Blood can improve wrestling, sure, but only when used correctly. For some, including Chris Jericho, this was just downright frightening.